Today's podcast is brought to you by Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance. When it comes to home and auto insurance, it's important to have the right coverage from a company and an agent you can trust. Someone who will help you properly protect the people and things you love most. So if the unexpected happens, you and your family can rest insured. To request a free quote, find your local KFB insurance agent at mykfbagent.com. Kentucky Farm Bureau, big on commitment. Well, hey, Matt, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I am good. It is a sunny day. I hope it's a sunny day when our listeners are hearing this podcast, but it's warmed up.
Yes, it's starting to finally warm up. The allergies are out.
Oh, yeah, full force.
I fully know that. They're back. But things are green. Things are coming to life. It's great.
Yeah, high energy here, and you guys are going to hear some high energy on this week's episode. Mackenzie Wright with our Young Farmer Committee, she's our chair for this year, called us out of Carroll County, and she's fantastic.
Yeah, just, Farm Bureau is built on people with ideas and energy and a voice and all those things. And she has all those qualities, and I think the audience is really going to like her a lot by the end of this one.
All right, well, without further ado, I'm Renee Carrico.
And I'm Matt Hilton.
And this is Between the Rows. Well, Matt, let's kick this thing off. Hey, Mackenzie, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We are so good. Thank you. You don't know this, but you are our first phone guest on the podcast. We've had everybody in person so far. So if we have any kinks, no pressure. We will figure it out. But we are so excited. You're helping us break new ground here.
I hope it goes well. Let's see how we can do here.
Well, let's kick this thing off pretty easy. Why don't you help the listeners? Tell us a little bit more about yourself. And even we can start off, where are you calling from?
So as you all just heard, that was the bells for our class change at our high school. I'm an ag teacher at Carroll County High School. I've been here for, I guess this is my 7th year here, but this is my 13th year teaching. So that's the bell for our kiddos to leave lunch. So you're going to hear that a couple more times in the next 5 minutes or so. So I apologize for that. But my husband and I operate a cow-calf operation in Carroll County. And so we got 2 little boys and just trying to figure out being somewhat new farmers of our own property and our own herd and navigating working off the farm as well. It's quite a chaotic life.
Well, I'm going to dig again because you live the same life I do. You are originally an Eastern Kentucky gal, right? I always tell people I'm Central Kentucky, but I can't let go of my West Kentucky roots. So where are you from in East Kentucky?
Oh, yeah. So I'm originally from Wolfe County in Eastern Kentucky, and my husband always jokes, he's like, when are you going to stop telling people that that's where you're from? And I'm like, I don't know that will ever stop because there's a lot to Eastern Kentucky that I love very dearly, and I will always hold a piece of that part of the world in my heart as what made me who I am. And so when I get stressed, if y'all throw some really tough questions at me, you might hear that accent come out a little stronger. So it's definitely still in there. But yes, I'm from Wolfe County originally, born and raised right there in Eastern Kentucky.
Cool. What did you guys, where'd you grow up on? Talked about the farm life.
Yeah.
And tell us a little about that.
So I am best of my recollection, I am a 5th generation. My mom has actually recently been doing some digging into that. They think it's much further than that, but I'm a 5th generation farmer. My mom's side, actually, we were fortunate to have a UK grad. My grandpa graduated with an agriculture degree from UK, worked for FSA for a while. My dad's side of the family farmed his whole life. He grew up on farming, and so that was kind of natural for him to just keep going. We did tobacco, hay, horses, cattle, the typical, kind of what you would stereotype as I guess I would stereotype as an Eastern Kentucky kind of farm. People like to joke that our cows had 2 legs longer than the other because they would make their little treks around the mountains to their pasture ground. And so we did a little bit of that. And so when the tobacco buyout left, we really got into some horses pretty heavily. I think that was my dad's way of keeping me busy on the weekends, but it was successful. So I was with him every Friday and Saturday night, traveling all over the state, showing horses, and I just grew to love it. I mean, I would follow him out the door every morning as best I could. And, just, I don't know any other way of explaining that. It was just something that was born into me to a certain degree. And that I just have loved my whole life is being an ag and being on a farm and involved in agriculture.
Ooh, I love the horse part. Okay, I need to find out. So growing up in Princeton, everyone I knew that did horses was barrel racers. And then I went to school in Lexington, and I was like, oh my gosh, there are thoroughbred farms here. And then I learned about saddlebreds and eventing. You know, you go to the College of Ag at UK, you're going to meet every horse person you've ever heard of. So I've also learned very different personality types in each sector. So what kind of horse showing were we doing?
So we were into the Tennessee walking horse industry pretty heavily back, I guess it would have been in the early 2000s. I had some older cousins that showed horses as well. And so I kind of got hand-me-down horses for a while. And then once they kind of graduated high school, it kind of became my thing. And we ended up, that industry kind of has taken a roller coaster that's a much deeper, longer conversation I could get on a soapbox about. But we kind of ended up getting out of that industry probably around 2008 when that kind of took a turn in what it was doing and what we were dealing with as that segment. But I always joke that, you know, I can make jokes about horse people because I was a horse person. So yes, you are spot on with the different personalities for the different horse industries. And they're very stereotypical. Like, I'm sure somebody's got a TikTok series on what horse people are by breed. I'm sure somewhere.
I love it.
What'd you learn?
You know,
What'd you learn growing up on a farm? You know, I think that's something that when I travel around and meet farmers with my job, there's a lot of commonalities and stuff with those folks. And what did you really learn through that life growing up as a kid?
I think the biggest thing that as an adult I look back on and know that I learned, I mean, you know, I learned the typical stuff of, you know, how to operate this, that, and the other, how to, you know, move cattle, you know, all the skills-based stuff. But I think that, you know, when I look back at it now, I learned and developed a love for the satisfaction of seeing the product of my work and the product of my labor. And so, like, I don't know that there's anything more rewarding to me. And it's probably what's really driven a whole lot of my career is being able to tangibly see my impact on things. And so, you know, when I think about my passions, you know, and I look at, you know, teaching, you know, people are like, oh, what's the greatest reward of your life? And, you know, I almost feel slightly guilty for my kids not being the first thing that comes out of my mouth. But I'm like, you know, there's so many students in my program that I have helped either understand why they should appreciate agriculture or develop a love for agriculture that they are like, at some point I will do this on my own, or I will figure out a way to be involved, or I will work for other farmers in our community. And so I think, you know, when you're finished with a job in ag, you know, whether it's in a school greenhouse or whether it's, you know, mowing hay or working or, you know, helping cattle, you know, go through the whole cow-calf process, you see a product, you have a tangible feel-good moment of I accomplished that. Like, it's not something that, you know, when we accomplish it, it's taken lightly or unappreciated. And so I think that, you know, that's probably the biggest thing that I learned. You know, of course, you know, like I said, I can tell you all the lessons my dad gave me and, you know, all the things that we did together. But, you know, I think that's what helps people love ag is it's rewarding. You know, I love looking out my window at my calves running through the field, and there's nothing better when my husband finishes the bush hogging, not me. You know, I get rewarded at that too, right?
Well, I think it's cool what you said about your own kids not being the first thing out of your mouth. But I think, I don't know, my parents were big volunteer leaders in a lot of things, whether it was sports or 4-H or whatever. And one of them said years later, they were like, it was cool to get a very small piece of shaping the mentors for my own kids. And you don't realize that, because I think as a kid you look to adults, but when you realize, like, especially you're teaching high school ag students, those are going to be your boys, if not already, those are your boys' mentors, whether it's an ag community, rural community. So them coming out of your mouth first is, I think it's a you know, two birds with one stone kind of deal. You're developing them to then be the next generation that helps develop your boys. I think that's really cool.
Right.
Well, and I think that's what's unique about ag classes in general and any career technical education program is, you know, when we teach parliamentary procedure and we teach presentation skills and tie to tie and, you know, handshake and job application and job interview skills, you know, but those are going to be the citizens in our communities. So, you know, when our farm bureaus reach out and we go to these, you know, classrooms, you know, the National Ag Day was just last month. And, you know, my county, like many others across the state, took kids into the classrooms and we read books. And, you know, when you build that image and that positivity of, hey, this is a program that you could go into when you're in high school and you could come back and read to little kids one day. Like, that stuff sticks with little kids. My big kids in my household, we have the big kids and we have our kids. And the big kids they are my chauffeurs. They are sometimes the biggest cheerleaders my kids have on the sidelines. But, they are absolutely mentors in my kids' life. And, very, very proud of them. And, I'm proud of what they're able to already impact on my own children, the lessons that they're able to see and the examples that I'm able to use and be like, oh, well, do you think Zane would have that attitude towards his mama? Like, gives me some good throwback at them when they start getting, a little bigger for the britches.
Yeah. So you went to school to be a teacher. What was it about being an ag teacher? I think that there's a unique role. It's not necessarily something that's at every high school. What was it about teaching ag students, Aggie kids, even in a rural school? What was it about that really appealed to you when you chose that path?
Well, that's a very interesting topic because I didn't really exactly choose this path. I went to school like many farm livestock girls and was like, had this dream vision of that I was going to go to vet school. And at the time, my high school, or I want to say that they didn't offer chemistry. If they did, I was definitely not in the mentality of that I needed to take chemistry. So when I got to UK, yeah, y'all laughing because and you might have passed chemistry, but I did not, okay? I got there and was rudely awakened with what I did not know. And so I was set on a course of several degree changes later to change my degree path and what I wanted to do. And my mom said, you need to find a career that you could do something and have a fallback. You got to have a fallback option. So I knew from the beginning, straight out of, little girl, Mackenzie knew that I would spend my life working in agriculture in some capacity. I didn't know what it was going to look like. That was my vision, was not to be a teacher. I never thought I would be a teacher, to be honest with you. I got this as a backup option. And then lo and behold, I met a boy at college, we do that thing, and so he says, I'm not going to ever live anywhere other than Carrollton, Kentucky. His family owns a construction business here in our town. And so I was like, at the time, freshman me was like, okay, so what? We're here having fun. It's a good deal. Okay, moving on. Yeah, 3 years later, and there's a ring, and I'm moving to Carrollton. This area, we were once extremely rich in tobacco production, one of the largest tobacco producing counties in the state because of our location right on the river, of Kentucky River and the Ohio River. Mm-hmm. And since then, we've had a large transition into industry. We still have a large ag base with a lot more cow-calf operations and diverse crops, but it's not like it once was. So there was not like this abundance of ag jobs here, but there was a few teaching jobs when I got out of college. And just like there is now, there's a shortage of ag teachers. And so I actually went into teaching as a backup plan. Never thought I would enter a classroom. I did not enjoy student teaching very much. I was in a school that was totally different than what I had ever experienced. I graduated with 59 kids out of Wolfe County High School in 2007. And when I student taught at Scott County High School in Georgetown under Miss Regina Fritch, that school had like 2,000 kids in it. And I was like a lost ball in tall wheat. It was crazy. And so I was like, if this is what teaching is, I want no part of it. And then Williamstown Independent called and wanted me to help start an ag program there. And the rest is kind of history. 13 years later, I've lived here my whole life, or not my whole life. I've lived here my whole teaching career in Carroll County. And then 7 years ago, I had the opportunity to come here and teach here. And so it's been really unique to teach in the community that I live in because, y'all were talking about the boys becoming my boys on the farm and the girls are my kids, Yeah, being able to live here, my teaching, she's considered in the Infinite campus as my teaching assistant in my room right now, she lives here too. She helped me get a kid to practice the other day. The boys are spraying hemlock and weed eating, and being a part of your community in that aspect of being able to be touched and tied to the high school it is really awesome. And I enjoy teaching in the town that I live in for sure. But I did not take a traditional path to get to being a teacher for sure.
Doesn't sound like it. I think that happens. You hear that quite a bit with teachers sometimes in different places. They kind of, just kind of stumble into it and find a path. Sometimes paths, find you. And it seems like you're the right person to take that on.
So Mackenzie, you talk about your teaching and you sound, you're incredibly passionate about it, and your husband and his family, the construction business, That sounds pretty busy. Why farm? What's the importance of farming still on what we call it in quotations, on the side? Sometimes it feels like the full-time weekend job, but why is that important to you guys? Why do you have a passion to do that while you've both got such busy work days?
My kid. There's no doubt. I mean, that's an easy answer for me because, I look at, and you know, there will be a place where, you know, sharing my thoughts on, you know, the way society's going another time. But I look at my kids who are 9 and 6, and you know, I'm the weird parent in our parent crew. My kids don't have video games. They don't have tablets. They don't have internet access. And I'm working my tail off to keep it that way as long as I can because I don't want my kids. I know I can't shelter them from the whole world, but right now I can. And the world that I want them to learn about is outside. The world I want them to learn about is the value in life and the reward from what we do on our farm. And so my boys are very, very much at the core of why we are stretching ourselves even a little thinner to make it happen. And it's because, you know, they're getting to be involved in, you know, well, why are we doing that? Or why did you do this? And they're asking questions, and they're, you know, my 6-year-old just last weekend got a lesson on how to run a gas weed eater. And he suddenly, for at least a short time, loves running that weed eater. You know, not sure he's always going to be thankful for that skill, but you know, I just think it's a cultural way to me of raising our children and the family life that we get to have. It's the community that I get to build within my community, but also across the state, that I don't want my kids to miss out on. I was blessed to get to be a part of that as a kid, and I want that for my kids. I want them to know, you know, when they look out there, that they did a job well or that they didn't do a job well, and that, you know, how to take that criticism and that correction. And so there's no doubt in my mind that, you know, for me, my husband would 1,000% say it's because I force him to farm. But I would tell you it's because that, you know, I force him to farm, and I will do everything in my power to continue farming because not only do I love it, but I want my kids to understand the value in, you know, caring for an animal, caring for the ground, caring for the soil. You know, my grandpa always told me, and my dad, you know, we were very fortunate for many years in Eastern Kentucky, you know, to do well as a family. And my grandpa always said, there's nothing in this world they're making more of except land. And so, you know, I pray my kids always look at the land we've been fortunate to buy and to be entrusted with as, you know, something valuable to be taken care of, to be appreciative of, and, you know, to learn and to be good stewards of, you know. So I definitely 100% keep on stretching because of my children and because what I want them to gain from it, for sure. For sure. None of us are, I ain't going to make money on it. Let's be for real here. Like, I got the wrong color cows apparently to make money. So,
well, jump into that. What kind of cows we got?
Oh gosh, I'm a sucker for some good old sweet Hereford cows. Like, listen, they got my heart. I had Angus growing up. My dad had Angus. My grandpa was kind of like, thought he was on the cutting edge of breedings. And so he rolled in with some Santa Gertrudis one time, and we had some of that left over and some Angus, and they were wild. They could jump over gates. They were crazy. So when I forced my husband into this whole farming deal, I knew I needed something that I could handle myself, because he doesn't come from a farming background or have farming knowledge. And it's a sour pill for him to swallow sometimes when he has to admit that I know what I'm talking about. But we're getting there. We're making strides, and I'm learning to not say I told you so. And, you know, now, I will admit we've had our fair share of, as the big boys that come help us work on the farm, they love to take, you know, videos of us arguing about things like fence line. They tell us that Dr. Field's coming any day to help us line it all out, and I don't believe them.
Yeah.
Might be a useful thing, but you know, we have Hereford cows, you know, and we're very blessed, you know, to be able to do what we want to do with them. And so our goal is to, you know, be able to sell black baldies, replacement bulls occasionally, and some stuff like that. But I like my Herefords. They're easy. I say they're easy, but sometimes they get so lazy that we have to like get down in a squatting stance and backpedal them in through the chute, because they're like, I don't care what I'm doing. And so that's where my muscled up big boys come in. I got probably half the football team in my program, so I'm pretty easy for me to find somebody with muscle that can help me out when I need them.
Cool. Yeah, it's good. You know, one thing with this podcast, we want to, you know, really highlight that, farmers are just people. They have the same, their jobs maybe a little different, but they're just people. So it's good to hear, a couple fighting over something. That happens all over America, over little things, So I do think that's pretty fun. Hearing everything, it feels like you have no time to do anything, but you decided to join a big organization years ago called Farm Bureau. Why? Why did you join this organization? And then really, why did it lead to leading in some way and trying to be kind of ambitious and take on some leadership roles?
So I guess my start in Farm Bureau really goes back to, in high school, I was a scholarship recipient from our county level there. And at the time, I didn't really have the knowledge base that I do now. But when I started teaching at Williamstown, Mark Kinsey, who is a dear, dear mentor of mine, he came up to me as the ag teacher there, and he said, "We want you to come to our board meetings, just an advisory role. I think you'd like it, and, be good for, we want to support you in the program." And so, they gave a monetary support to the program there every year. And he really encouraged me. He said, "I think you would enjoy these leadership opportunities and these workshops and all this." And so I started going 13 years ago to Young Farmer Leadership, winter leadership, summer outing, anything I could get to. And so I kind of just watched this from the outside a little bit for a while and didn't really understand like the core values of what Farm Bureau is at its heart. We hear grassroots organization, advocacy for agriculture, the voice of agriculture, but like really when you get down to being in this seat now and learning what I've learned in the last probably 3 to 5 years of my involvement in Farm Bureau, like what are the core values? What do we stand for? Learning how to explain to people we're not just an insurance company. We are an insurance company, but not just that, is kind of where I've really decided, this is a group that in terms of ethics and value, beliefs at the core of, what I want to instill in my children, it's spelled out in the values and the codes of ethics in Farm Bureau. So, when I looked at that and how it aligned to my own personal beliefs and my husband's and what we wanted for our family, we were like, this is our people. These are our people, So this, it wasn't just an agriculture connection that I had with them. Yes, I've learned tremendously about all the resources and connections and networking across the state, people from Fulton, pig farmers in Fulton to, Reed and Heather in Eastern Kentucky that have the firewood business, the networking connections are super valuable. But, when I also think about what I've gained from let me get my words out here, from Farm Bureau is, we had an incident at winter? I think it was winter leadership last year at Covington, where one of our committee members' son fell, hit his head, was going to need to go to the hospital, get some stitches. We immediately swooped in as a committee and we were like, okay, we got the older boy, go. Like, don't even look back. We'll take care of him. And they went. Like, we became a family in Farm Bureau, and we would have done that for anybody that even wasn't on the committee. I think when you realize how connected you are on the values, ethics, lifestyle, choices, all of those things that so many people in society are afraid to say, this is where my connections lie, because sometimes it's much easier to avoid those topics. You realize that you've got a family of people that you can trust. And, I'm the kind of mama bear that's like, oh, Parker, you can sit with Renee, because if you act out, Renee's going to get a hold of your tail and you're going to wish that mama was probably here. And Renee knows that if she doesn't get on my kid and she lets him act a fool, that I'm going to be mad at Renee too. Like,
absolutely.
It is that kind of family. Like, that's what I want. Those are the friends that I want. Those are the people that, you become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I could name off hundreds of people in Farm Bureau that I would gladly become like. And so why would I not seek out professionals, industry experts, all of these people that I look up to who are willing and open arms, ready to mentor me further, whether it's just on my farm or if it's in a leadership role. So, I mean, the value of what Farm Bureau has bred into me and just built into me and allowed me to have is far stretching from just increasing the betterment of my own small farming operation, for sure.
It's so funny you say that. We laugh all the time. We look at vacation days to figure out when we're going where. And Peyton, my husband, always comes with me to at least 1 or 2 things Farm Bureau related. And everyone says, golly, you're going to waste vacation days, like going when your wife has to work. And he's like, but these are like our people. And he says it all the time. Like, I like who they do what I do. I can be in a meeting in the same hotel, but he's got a whole crew of people to hang out with and go to the seminars and do the things because that's what we live. And so that hits home so well. And I can't tell you how many people's kids have been sat by me when they go to do a quick Young Farmer Committee task because they're like, you stay with Miss Renee. And if Miss Renee texts me, I'm going to know something went wrong. And I mean, I love that. So I cannot say enough how much I agree with what you're saying. It's family more than it is just an organization. I think you guys will hear that as viewers throughout these podcasts, how much of a family this really is. You talked about.
You just remember that you promised to be that family that's going to line my kid out if he needs it. Okay. You're not allowed to always be the fun aunt. Okay.
Well, then don't send him to Matt. Matt looks like fun uncle vibes.
I'm a pushover. So.
You talked about what seat you're in now. You talk about what seat you're in now. So help everybody understand. We talk about Young Farmer Committee, but you've gotten to take an extra step in that, voted on by that committee. And we're getting to see you 4 or 5 times more this year at some of the board meetings. So help us understand kind of the new role you're getting to work in for a year.
Shooey, I think I'm still learning about this new role every day. It feels like I joke that the gift for this position should have been a suitcase because I was prepared. They gave, they do prepare you very well for this role in terms of here's where your obligations are going to be and, here's what we need from you and stuff like that. But, it's a very different feel from, being on the committee or being, someone that's just involved membership wise. I have thoroughly enjoyed, all of my opportunities that have been presented before me from, getting to, just further build those connections, on when we go to board meetings. My first learning about how much family this was like was the very first board meeting in December after annual meeting. Eli Mann, the past chair, took me to the meeting, and I was standing on the back wall just kind of, letting everybody file in. And PJ Milburn walks in and he says, "Now, we don't have assigned seats, but don't sit in anybody else's chair." And I was like, "That's great. What kind of advice is that?" So I'm like, okay, now I'm terrified to sit down. Well, Glenn Howe walks up and he was like, "You're just going to sit by me, little lady." And if you know Glenn is this towering 6 foot something, huge guy, big teddy bear. And here I am barely creeping over 5'2". And so now my seat is by Glenn Howe. Every time we go to a board meeting, that's where I'm going to be. Glenn's going to put me right next to him. And it's, I'm sure that, Glenn just never thought that he'd be taking the little blonde lady underneath his wing to raise at Farm Bureau meetings. But, it's networking and family like that all the way to, opportunities to, speak before Mitch McConnell in Washington, D.C. when we did our legislative trip there, and to ask questions that are pertinent to farm families. One thing that's impacted my family and, my husband's self-employed. And one of the things that, I think is an issue that, obviously we can't solve at a state or Farm Bureau level, but we've got to bring attention to for farm families and for small business owners is the health insurance issue. It's not so much healthcare or health bills. It's a health insurance. It's a whole system of issues. And so, I got to ask my question before Mitch McConnell, in Washington, which was, I guess I felt really big and proud of myself for having the guts to ask the question, but it's a question that needs to be asked. And, it's an opportunity to ask your questions that you need, and so for those around the state that aren't in these seats, we want to know the questions you need us to ask. We have the Eggs and Issues breakfast for young leaders, and we ask counties and we ask those that are representative of the counties. So what are the issues in your hometown? What are they? A couple of years ago on our farm, we have some power lines, big power line towers, like the big, I don't even know what you call them. They're like the transformer things. They're huge. They've got the fence around the base of them, and we've got 3 of them, okay? And so this line runs through our property, and a helicopter came through with what looked like a chainsaw hanging down from a rope to trim the trees around these power lines. Well, we didn't know they were coming. We didn't know they dropped the limbs. We knew they dropped the limbs because our fence caught them so nicely for them. But we had no idea. And so, that was before I was on the committee. And so I was able at that Eggs and Issues breakfast to look at the committee chair at the time, which was for my district was Taylor Jones, and to say, hey, this is an issue. I didn't even know it was going to be an issue, but I need somebody to help me figure out who do I call to say my fence is broken. And you did that. So, we ask counties to bring those issues to us, and, that's their role. That's their, what we want from them is what's happening in your community that's a problem. Is it zoning? Is it planning? Is it buzzards, black-headed buzzards? We got a lot. Lord, Renee's probably going to whip me for even mentioning those on the podcast. But
my department covers that if you need a sub permit out there, reviewer.
I know. She's your lady. Go get your permits, okay? Go get your permits. I think she preaches that at every opportunity she can. So there's my plug for you, Renee.
Thank you.
Yeah, but we need those issues to be brought to the table, and it's when you attend those events that you get to do that. And so, whether it's me in my seat that I'm very fortunate and blessed and thankful for to take those issues further, we actually had a big legislative push for that helped ag that came from the Young Farmer Committee, which was the additional funding for river ports and to benefit the river ports. That stuff just went through the legislation this spring and, or this year, I guess I should say, probably, lowering the ag districts limits just passed as well. That's a huge issue that's going to impact young farmers, new farmers, beginning farmers, whatever kind of farmer you want to be, for land access. And so those issues come from the people that are in the communities, and we need them. I'm teaching a leadership book right now, and, there's this part that says, leaders need their people more than the people need the leaders. And it's looking at the percentage of work that gets accomplished by one versus the whole. I can't be in this seat if I don't have people from my community, from your communities, from across the state attending these events, bringing their issues to us and letting us help figure out what does that look like for them. And so it's a blessing to be in this spot. I am thoroughly enjoying it. I've learned a whole lot. I've talked a whole lot.
We understand how that is. We're talkers.
Yeah. I always joke that if I get to follow Renee, somebody's gone before me and talks faster. So I should be good. They should be able to understand me. Renee will tell you. Renee will admit. Glenn Howe is one of them that loves to pick on her about how fast she talks in such a short amount of time. He'll look at me in the meetings and go, "Now, what did she just say?"
I tell him to crank up their hearing devices and buckle in, because I'm gonna give the most efficient timed report out of anybody in that board meeting.
You can listen to podcasts on like ×2 speed.
Yeah.
She probably does. That's what she does. She races herself is what she's going to do. She's going to listen to this and be like, I was too slow.
I need to speed up a little bit. Well, what's cool about your role is you get to see the inner workings of the board and kind of what they do and what they get exposed to. And a lot of other young farmers don't get that. Is that a neat thing to see and be able to kind of see Farm Bureau working at a whole different kind of level? Has that been a neat part of the role you're in?
Oh, that's probably been the most interesting part of what role I've been in. I definitely would say that it's to Farm Bureau's credit that I haven't necessarily been given any opportunity that's not afforded to all Farm Bureau members that are involved in young farmers. But the board meetings are extremely interesting. I've learned in terms of, everything from Phil when he gives us his financial reports, and I have to take that back and sit for a very long time to digest and understand what he said, even though he talks much slower than Renee. I'm not a finance person. I did not understand all of those pieces of the puzzle. And so I'm learning about all of that, when we hear about the insurance side of things and, just the leadership roles. And, I think the thing that's been most interesting to me to learn about is the legislative piece and how we are active in Frankfurt and in Washington, D.C. We're very blessed with Erica and Kyle, who work extremely hard for Farm Bureau. And I think that, a lot of people don't know about what Erica and Kyle do and the value in their roles. Erica King and Kyle Kelly are boots on the ground, for a cliche analogy there, when it comes to the issues that we have brought from our county levels to these meetings, to the boardroom, to now their plates to, hey, go make something happen with this, or go find the resources for these people. And so I've learned, that they're a call away. They are a call away to anybody. They're an email away. If you don't know them, or you have an issue, or you have a question about a law or about something that's happening, or a resource in the state that you don't know about, they're there, and they're extremely intelligent, extremely smart. I was fortunate to go to eat with Erica after one of our legislative things, and I was just in amazement at her knowledge of federal workings and all the things that happen on the Hill there, and they're just such a value. And I've really enjoyed learning more about the legislative side and, the power and the weight behind all of the Kentucky Farm Bureau members when they are able to walk in a room and say, hey, this is an issue. And the heads immediately turn and give attention because they know that all of these people across the state are behind them. and that they're speaking on behalf of all these amazing people that are going to vote for those people one of these days. So that's been probably my favorite part to learn about.
Yeah, and this my question kind of tees off of that perfectly. So we have another piece that people, our listeners will hear, and it's Farm to Frankfurt, where Kyle and our president, Eddie Melton, will get a chance to talk to quite a lot of people and really dive into things like session. But kind of coming off a session, and we had a good one. You'll hear about that on those priority issues. This is going to air towards the end of May, and we're going to be diving. People are going to be coming out of planting and diving right into what's the next year look like. So from a young farmer perspective, Mackenzie, what are you guys already starting to hear, or you guys yourself are seeing in your area? What are some big challenges that the young farmers themselves are facing, kind of going into this next year, looking at the next issues to come up?
I think, people will probably say this is a dead horse that we keep beating on, but, I think the land acquisition and the financial ability to purchase land is always going to be a major factor for young farmers. Not everyone's going to be fortunate enough to have land given down to them. And we've got some really cool things in the works with, farm transition programs, and Alita Bot's working on some really cool stuff to help with that. But, beyond that, we had some really interesting conversations that I got to be a part of recently about that, a 20-year-old in today's time, which young farmers, technically our age group is 18 to 35. So if you hit the middle there, even at 25, 23, 25. In today's time, in 2024, it is very difficult for a person of that age to accrue the wealth enough to purchase land valued at what it's valued at now, with interest rates and financing and credit scores and, all the things that go into just living. It's difficult. It's very difficult. I think that, we've had many conversations as a board about, a lot of the land that's getting purchased, by what would somewhat be considered young farmers, but not, is those people more closely to my age, which I'm on the high side of the young farmer program at 35, because I am finally settled in my career. We've been married for 13 years. We've been able to save funding, to save money, to purchase land in a county that I did not grow up in. So this is not, the land we farm is not land that my family has owned for generations. Now, we were very fortunate that my parents were able to use some of the land in Wolfe County through, selling and helping purchase our farm with us. But we could not have done that in an Oldham County, in Jessamine County, and these counties where our farmland is not cheap by no stretch of the imagination. For us in Carroll County, the issue is it's bought faster than I can get to the lenders to get approval almost. Mm-hmm. Even if you've got pre-approval, there's somebody in line with more money ready to say, okay, well, I'll give you $5,000 more. And so it's very difficult. To me, I think that's the one that I'm hearing a whole lot across the state. We've had a lot of conversations for young farmers about, how do we value add to our products that we're raising? One of the major limiting factors for anyone looking into going into freezer beef, and it's slowly getting to be better, is, processing availability. I have lots of steers running around my farm right now that are probably could make really good freezer beef if somebody didn't notice they had red hair on them. But it's a matter of, can I get an appointment to get that taken care of? So, for anyone that's looking into venturing into that realm of processing or, business adding onto their farm, building that connection and getting that opportunity can somewhat be limited, in processing availability. One thing that I noticed at our school level, we used to raise turkeys at the school, is poultry processing is far and in between in our state. I'm licensed to use the Kentucky State unit that's there on their campus, but, that's in Frankfurt. Nobody from Fulton's going to drive all the way to Frankfurt. And I'm not familiar if Western Kentucky has a poultry processing facility, but it's too far away that I was not willing to drive that direction for it. So, I think that, as we're moving towards more of a culture of, backyard homesteaders that do have a flock of 20, 50 birds in their backyard that they would like to process, that poultry processing is going to be something that I see that we could see a demand for. Now, the finances of that, everybody tells you, don't go touching that because you're not going to make any money. That's what you hear, about anything, I think, in agriculture. And, a lot of the guys, the older mentors I have in my community are looking at my husband and I, and they're going, Josh, you're going to need to tell her no, because you're never going to make money in farming. You're never going to make money in farming. Well, we got to do things differently than they've always been done if we're going to make money in farming. And we've got to figure out another value added way to make us stand out. And so I'm not sure that my husband would agree that the red cows were the way to do that. But, we're definitely, I think that, for young farmers, it's all about, how do we make ourselves different? How do we bring something to the table that's not been there before, or that's unique in a niche market, or get into, these large urban farmers markets? Mm-hmm. What does that look like for all of us? I've got a good friend in Madison County, Andrew Simpson, who, has done a freezer trailer. He takes his freezer beef to the Lowe's parking lot in his community to sell out of his freezer trailer on the weekends. I mean, that's adding value to his product. That's getting himself in front of a better market of people. He's developed websites, and he and I, alongside each other, have learned a whole lot through Farm Bureau and the opportunities that have been given to us from workshops, from marketing and website development, all that kind of stuff. But I think that a lot of young farmers are the dead horse of land acquisition is never going to be something that goes away, I feel like, because a lot of communities like mine don't have planning and zoning, and so what's to keep somebody from doing whatever they want to with it? So. Mm-hmm. And those are some of the big things I see, for sure.
And it's wild. I think that's one of the neatest things about the committee itself, being obviously members across the state represent different areas, but especially like the summer meeting and the winter meeting, you think it's just you, or you think it's all for your reason. Mm-hmm. My area, it's Bourbon. There's rick houses going in. Some building of, subdivisions, Oldham County. It feels like it's Louisville spreading out. But then I'll talk to my East Kentucky counterparts, and ever since COVID, you've got people from all these other states building their little sanctuary on a hill, what they call a hill. And so even the ground in areas of the state that we would have always thought, you could always snag a few acres, they just may not be 100 all in one spot. Those guys are starting to have these same problems. And so I think it is very interesting to get everyone in the same room and see that, this is not isolated to one area. This is not just the guys around E-Town or the guys around Louisville. This is all over the state. And so it's very interesting you say that. You say it's like beating the same drum over and over, but it's obviously caught enough interest. We got a lot of groups partnering in and working with us on that. So very glad you brought that one up. I want to make sure we keep talking about all these meetings. I want to give you a chance. We're in May, and you've got a pretty cool meeting happening in June. So I want to give you a chance to give a shout out to, and we're going east. So I want to give you a chance to give a shout out of what's happening in June with young farmers.
You could also call that God's country is where we are going.
Look out.
We are going to Ashland at the end of June for our Young Farmer Summer Outing. It was the first opportunity that I had to become involved in Young Farmers, which was Summer Outing. And it is an amazing opportunity to see new, diverse operations, to meet new people, to really get to kind of explore Farm Bureau in I don't want to say casual way, but in a comfortable way, maybe is a better word to put it, because it's not an event that you're going to be having to navigate a hotel room for conference rooms and moving from, listening to speaker to speaker. There's going to be some of that, of course. But my favorite part of Summer Outing will always be that we get to do farm tours and industry tours. And we have got some amazing things lined up, from everything from a marathon partnership that we're hoping to have to Imel's Greenhouse. We've got some farms lined up that are doing some really cool things, from maple syrup, and it's going to be a really awesome event. I know that it is a long way. It's like 3.5 hours from me where I'm sitting right now. It's going to be a haul for some of our West Kentucky people for sure, but I definitely hope and pray that they find the value in going and seeing what the east side of the state's doing. And like Renee just mentioned, it's going to be super valuable to hear that your problems are not your own, and that somebody over there might have already figured out a solution to something that you have an issue with. And, we joke that, when you get involved in Farm Bureau and young farmers especially, you could have a flat tire in any county and we would know who to tell you to call for help. Because you learn, you expand and you grow. And so I would really, really encourage everybody to not overlook the drive. Yes, it's going to be a haul, but it's definitely going to be worth it. I think we're all really excited as a committee about what we've got planned, and excited for that to get here. But yes, join us. I believe it's the last weekend in June. We're going to be in Ashland, Kentucky. Open signups are open still. I would hope they're still open when this comes out. That would be really beneficial to make sure Taylor Nash makes sure of. So we hope to see everybody there in Ashland. for that event, because it's a cool way to get your toes in the water and to get it started for sure.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a neat event. I think, in comparison, not to knock any other event, but there's that laid back, that casual. You get to do some tours, lots of good networking. It's the summer. There's lots of families there. I think it's really neat about the summer outing. And for instance, there's just kids everywhere. It's a neat event, so I think people should take a look at it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you brought up the kid thing. We as a Young Farmer Committee have really made an effort to make sure that people understand that your kids are welcome at our events. Even when I'm speaking on stage, I know that there's going to be the carpet farmers in the back. I mentioned carpet farming at an AFBF event, and you would be surprised at how many states don't know what carpet farmers are. I was like, well, what do your children do when you drag them to all these meetings? Like, what? So, we want you to bring your kids. We want you to know that it's just like when you're sitting at church at home. You hear them, but I don't hear them. I promise. Okay, they're never going to be told that we gotta find a new place. We have kids workshops. We have kids friendly tours. Everything that we have done at these events, we want to make sure young families are able to come and enjoy on all levels, with their kids included, for sure. Because not everybody can find a babysitter all the time.
Yeah, if you think the tractor arguments begin as teenagers or adults, you are very wrong. I've seen many a young child with a blue tractor, a red tractor, and a green tractor telling them why their daddy drives that color and that kid has the wrong one in their hand. Yeah, right. And it is hilarious. It is so funny watching little grown men fighting over tractors. It's one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, farm kids don't argue with your mama jokes. They argue with your daddy and his tractor jokes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, Mackenzie, we cannot thank you enough. I know we had some scheduling woes. We were going to have you in person, but honestly, this has been really cool to get a chance to talk to you. Hear the bells in the background. They were faint, so don't worry about it. Glad the kids made it to class on time. But no, we just appreciate you taking time out of your day. I think the listeners are really going to enjoy this, and we look forward to talking to you again. We'll get a recap at one point of how well, I know it will go well, that Ashland conference goes. So we're very excited. Thank you so much.
Yeah, call anytime. In the summer, you won't have to listen to the school bells.
Yes, thank you for your time today. A lot of great energy and a lot of great ideas, and I think we really appreciate your leadership and just being involved in Farm Bureau. People like you are why Farm Bureau is what it is. So just keep it up, and I would just encourage you to keep leading like you are. So
I appreciate that very much, and I'll do the best I can for sure.
All right. So thank you, Mackenzie, and thank you, listeners, for joining. Make sure and subscribe to our larger podcast, The Farm Life, to catch our next episode. And we'll see you next time on Between the Rows.